Hello and welcome to another episode of Heavenly Minded. I'm Chloe Wilson and I told you that my voice would be back to normal. Feeling on top of the world. But what do you know about business? If you went, well, what do you know about business, Chloe? I would say, quite frankly, absolutely nothing. Apart from the fact that surely those who do well in business make a lot of money. So if you are a Christian in business, how do you get that balance right between being successful and keeping God at the centre? Should Christians be successful? Should they be allowed to earn lots of money? What does the Bible say about that? Well, those are all things that we're going to explore today because my guest is Gemma Francis. She is the founder and managing director of The Big Sing. They are a community choir bringing people together to unite them through music. They've performed with Ellie Goulding. They've sung to Jamie Oliver, toured with Leona Lewis. So essentially, the big in The Big Sing is big. Let's see what we can learn about business then. Well, Gemma, it's lovely to have you with us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. I've had a busy day already, doing lots of singing today.
Amazing. What kind of things have you been singing?
So I run The Big Sing, so we sing in the community. So this morning I have been singing with the babies and the tots, and we've been doing lots of uplifting singing with them, with instruments and shakers and bubbles and lots of different things.
Oh my goodness me, that's completely melted my little heart. I was expecting you to say that you got like some kind of choir together where you were harmonising, but the babies,
Yeah.
that's killing me. That's absolutely adorable. Well, Gemma, you seem to be a woman of many talents because when I was doing my background research, every single website that I came across, it was just adding to the list of things that you can do. Like you seem to be able to do everything within the music industry. You can sing, you conduct, and yet at the same time, you also do business. And that's what I want to talk about today. Now, I've got no experience in business whatsoever, but just for a bit of background and so we can get to know you that little bit better, talk us through The Big Sing. You just mentioned it. You've been doing it with the little ones this morning. What is The Big Sing and how did it come into being?
Okay, so The Big Sing started 10 years ago, and at the time, me and my husband, we were singers and musicians for the London Community Gospel Choir, so professional musicians. And my husband was touring with people like Westlife, Blue, Will Young, those kind of people. And we just thought, you know what, we just need to do something for our community. We felt that God was calling us to do something in our community where we lived. So we just thought we'd start a choir and get people singing and singing uplifting music that will make them feel happy. And that's what we did. And it was just supposed to be a 6-week project. And then 6 weeks later, we had like 45 choir members and we did a performance like to finish the project. And they said to us, you know what, you can't end this. This has become like a choir family. And they loved it so much. And, you know, they were coming up to us with stories about how the choir had helped them through loneliness and depression. And it helped them get through isolation and made them form new friendships. And it really was like a little family. So we just thought, you know what, we'll carry on. We'll just carry it on as a hobby, as like something in our spare time. And before we knew it, there was people in the next town asking us to start a choir. So we did. And then the parents were asking us to start something for their kids. So we started Little Sing for kids choirs. Then we did Tiny Sing for the babies. And everything just grew organically. And it kind of got to that place where we were getting pretty busy with The Big Sing. And we had to kind of make a decision whether we were going to really go for this and, you know, make something of it, or whether we would just keep it as a little hobby. And I think that was like a really big turning point where God was calling us to the next stage and calling us, giving us a vision to make The Big Sing even bigger than what we had imagined it to be. So we basically went headfirst into it, and we now have choirs across Kent, Essex, London and the Midlands, over 20 choirs. And we've got we did have, before the pandemic, we had office choirs, community choirs, kids going into schools, working with disabled people. We're just trying to reach out to everyone in the community, no matter who they are, no matter what backgrounds, what culture, just uniting people with uplifting music that will make them feel happy.
Wow. So you went from having 45 members of a choir, and now all of a sudden there are just choirs all over the place. And this is essentially a business now. How was that for you transferring from, you were in music, you were singing professionally. How was that then transferring into the business side of things?
Well, I've always been involved in business. I mean, even from university, did a business degree. So my main kind of passion was always business. And when I left university, I actually went to work for the London Community Gospel Choir as their marketing manager first, before I began singing with them. So I've always kind of run business and music side by side together. But it was something else starting your own business. And when we started the Big Sing, we started our own business, and we had to make it work. We had to make it sustainable. We had to make it run financially and cover costs and everything. So it was a massive leap and a big step of faith in a way. And I think we started off very small, so I could learn a lot of stuff as we went along. And I think if I knew now that it would be as big as it is, 10 years later, we would have like thousands of choir members. I don't know if I would be brave enough to have started it 10 years ago. I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for.
Well, I bet you're glad you've done it though.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we give everything to the Big Sing. It is our calling. It's not work for us. It's not a job. It's just what we were born to do. We were born to create music. We were born to unite people with music, and it's part of us. So we absolutely love it.
What would you say though is the hardest part about starting your own business and running all of that kind of stuff?
I think the hardest part is the risk of it all. Like, when you're setting things up, are people going to come? Are we going to cover costs? When you're paying out deposits and things, is this going to be a success? I think that's the hardest part. And when you're running your own business, you're putting a lot of your own time, energy, and resources on the line. And to make it all work and all come together, that is the toughest part. But it's also the most rewarding, because when it does work and when it all comes together, it's amazing. And that you've put everything into it from start to finish.
So you've got the Big Sing, that's what we've just been talking about, but you've also got a charity that's kind of stemmed out from that. It's the Big Sing Soul. Now, this came into being with the help of the lions. And just to confirm, this is not like actual lions, like something out of a Disney movie. But Gemma, just tell us briefly what the lions are and how the Big Sing Soul, how that charity came into being too.
Yeah, so what we found was that with the Big Sing, we was appealing to a lot of people, but because it was all self-funded, people had to pay to come to rehearsals, which was great for a majority of people. But there were certain groups of people in the community that couldn't afford it, or they couldn't actually come physically to rehearsals to be with us. So I just had this idea that one day that, it'd be great to start a charity, and then we can get funding and we can go out in the community. We can go into schools, we can go into nurseries, we can work with the disabled, we can really work with vulnerable people who need this music. And because the music was helping us so much to overcome, depression and isolation and everything, we know that this music will really help even more vulnerable people than us. So I just had a dream that let's start a charity. But I did not have one clue how to start a charity. I've never started a charity in my life. It was hard enough starting the business. So I didn't know where to turn. And I just saw this advert, I think it was on Facebook actually, for the Lions. And it looked really interesting. And it's like a version of Dragon's Den and The Apprentice mixed together, but the Christian version. So, it's not as scary or as judgmental. And I thought I'd just apply for it. And I applied for it and I didn't think any more of it. And I put my idea down that I wanted to start a charity. I put down what the Big Sing had already done, but what we wanted to achieve by starting the charity could accomplish so much more. And I got through. I passed all the audition process. I got in. They only take like 15 candidates a year. You go on 6 weekends away with them, and they give you mentoring, training. They show you how to make your idea a God idea and how to really make an impact, a kingdom impact. So you don't have to have a Christian company or a Christian charity. you could just have a Christian ethos. And their vision is to really help Christians in business, or charities or churches, to really make a difference. So me being on the course just made me think and believe so much bigger. I mean, I went on there just to start a charity, and I came out of there and they helped me set the charity up. They helped me employ a charity manager so that I didn't have to run it myself. They showed me how to get grants and funding so that I could really get the wheels in motion. And even now, they're still helping me, mentoring me. When I need help, I go to them. So it's so good to have business mentors that you can just offload on and just talk to about what's going on. And that's what the Lions have been to me. They've been amazing.
And I guess, as you said, they are turning those ideas into God ideas. I loved that phrase, the ideas into the God ideas. So were they able to play a part in making sure that you kept God at the center of running your business? Because stereotypically, running a business in this day and age can be seen as quite secular. So did the Lions help you to kind of, I guess, get that balance right between the secularity of running a business, but also making sure that God was in the midst of it all?
Oh, totally. And the reason why they did that is because they are Christians in business themselves. So, the Lions are made up of very successful businessmen and women who are not only in churches, some of them are pastors in churches, but others of them, they are running multi-million-pound companies. So they are in the business world. They know exactly what they are doing. And I think the biggest thing for me was that they showed me how we can have a Christian ethos and not necessarily be outright Christian. We can show people how to value each other, how to love each other, how we can take Jesus into the world just by showing people, not necessarily preaching. And, not all businesses are designed to talk about Christianity and Jesus and God 24/7, but we are set to be an example and to do things the right way and to have that Christian ethos running through every vein of the company. And so that information was just amazing to me.
Well, we're going to talk about the Lions in a few moments' time, but I heard an interview recently with a very successful businesswoman. She's been on TV, lots of different places. She was on another podcast, and she admitted that when she first started up her business, it was all about the money. It was about making the most money that you possibly could, and that was what determined your success. But Gemma, I've got a Bible verse here from 1 Timothy 6 and verse 7, which says, "We brought nothing into the world, so we cannot carry anything out of it." And with this podcast being about being heavenly minded, I guess I want to know, how do you do business as a Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having money or making money. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is important is how you are responsible for using money. If God gives you those resources, then He wants to make sure you're using it in the right way. It's about that story from the Bible, isn't it? When God gave those talents out, and He gave someone just a small amount and some of them bigger amounts. And the message of what He was trying to say was, what is it that you're going to do with them? It's not really about how much you have, but what are you going to do with these resources that I'm giving to you? And when you have money, when you're making money, it's really important that you pray and that you ask God, what do you want me to do with this? How can I responsibly use this money to enhance the kingdom, to spread your word? What do you want me to do? And that's what's really important. I don't think God has any problems with us making money in itself, but what are we going to be responsible for when we do?
That's a very good point. And it reminds me actually of when I was at university, we used to have these youth weekends away, and there was a man who had this huge house and he had a lot of money. He was very successful in what he did. He worked hard and he was earning all of this money. And I remember being told the story that he went to the elders of his church because he was at that point where he went, I don't know what to do with this money. I've got all of this money and I want to use it for the glory of God, but how do I go about doing that? And, it's not like it was his fault for earning this money. He'd clearly earned it and he could have quite easily gone, well, I'm just going to spend it all. I'm going to save it all. And the elders said, well, you need to pray about it and see what God would have you do. And that then led him on to go and buy this gigantic house. And what he would do is he would open it up to youth groups and churches and say, come and stay. And I don't know if he charged any money. I don't think he did, or if I've got a feeling that maybe he didn't, but he would be a part of that weekend and we would cook for him and he would come and join in on the Bible studies. And that's always stayed with me because you looked at him, you went, he was a very humble man. And I think he clearly had God at the center. But I know people, I've seen it in churches before where people have looked down on other Christians who maybe are quite successful. And I find that quite difficult.
Yeah. And you know what, as a business person, you can be judged like that in church. We know I've heard so many stories about people who feel bad for making money. They feel bad that they're Christians in business. And we shouldn't be made to feel that way because actually God has given us a purpose. God's given us a strategy, and we can use the resources he's given us to make a difference, even in church life.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think it's also important to remember that for those of us who aren't making the multi-million pounds or aren't earning that kind of money, we're still just as valued in the kingdom, aren't we? Because I've had it before where I've looked at other people who maybe have got a lot more money than me and gone, well, if I had that much money, I'd be able to put on this display of food and have loads of people round, or I'd be able to afford to buy a bigger car so I could take people. But that's not the case at all, is it?
No, and also, with a lot of money comes great responsibility. God puts a lot more responsibility on the people who have these resources. So, yeah, it could be quite under pressure when you've got that much resources.
So how do you go about dealing with that and keeping God at the center if you've been entrusted with all of those resources?
I mean, to be honest, I don't make loads of money. I wish I did. But I think as a business person, you've just got to keep faithful to God. You've got to keep him, you've got to talk to him daily and get guidance. If you're keeping God in the center of everything you're doing, then you can be really assured that every decision you make in business will be the right one and be the place that he wants you to go. And it can be tough. We've just come through COVID. COVID was disastrous for us in terms of singing. The government said overnight that all of a sudden singing was banned. And, when we was in lockdown, we couldn't meet. That was our whole business, stopped overnight. So through that, though, through those dark times, through those times where we didn't know what was happening, God was still there with us, and he was still there guiding us through, showing us the way, and being with us and getting us through it. So it's really about making sure that you stay in tune with him.
And I guess kind of linking in with that, how would you stay in the world and not of it when you're trying to be successful, you're trying to stay faithful to God? How would you go about getting that balance?
Oh, you just have to be an example. Every situation that you are in, you have to be God's example. And you don't necessarily have to preach or tell people about Jesus 24/7, but people, especially in the big sing, they know that we're Christians. And most of the people in the choir are not Christians, but they know we're Christians, but we don't preach at them. We just teach them music. We just get them singing. But they watch our lives very closely. They're fond of us. They see us every week. They feel attached to us. We're part of them and they're part of us. And when we go through highs and lows of life, they watch to see how we adapt and how we react. So all the time we have to be God's example. Even when we're feeling low and things are tough, we have to show the world that, we've got faith. This, God's getting us through. And, that's the best way for us.
So for someone who may be listening to this podcast now and going, well, actually, either I'm in business or I'd quite like to have a go at starting my own business, what advice would you give to them as a successful Christian businesswoman?
Yeah, so for me, it's about having a Christian mentor. If you don't have a mentor, then it can just be a minefield. Business is a minefield as it is. And just to have somebody to talk to help you through the beginning steps, to walk those steps with you it is amazing to have. And for me, the Lions have been that for me. They're the ones that I've been able to go to help with decisions, to help with guidance. And they've just been my mentor through the whole thing. And without them, I definitely wouldn't be where I am now.
So let's go back to the Lions for a moment then, because they are there to help Christian pioneers and entrepreneurs just to get going in the business world. So if someone's interested in applying, as someone who's been through that process yourself, what do they need to do? What tips can you give us?
basically you don't have to have anything started up. You might just have an idea. It could be in anything in business, in church, or in charities, anything that is going to enhance the kingdom. They are just looking for something that can impact people and communities. So you might have a little idea, you might have had something already established that you need help and guidance with to take to the next level. Or you might have been really successful, but maybe something like COVID has just come and disrupted everything, and you need to bounce back right now, and you need help and guidance to do that. You know, this course is a year's course, and once you get on it, they've given you their help and support for that year. And at the end of it, you do like a pitch, like you see on Dragon's Den. You do a pitch of your idea, and then they decide from there whether they give you more mentoring or whether they give you some seed money. Maybe you need some money just to help to get you to that next level. So they have all that available, and they don't want anything in return. It's not like The Apprentice where they take 50% of your company. It's not that at all. You know, these are Christians in business, and they want to give and they want to help support other Christians in business, and with no agenda. There's nothing in return that they want. They just want to see you be successful and enhance the kingdom.
That's incredible. Well, I'm just looking on the website now, which is thelions.org.uk, if you want to go and check them out. For 2022, there are 6 weekends that you go on. What kind of things do you do at those weekends? Give us a bit of a sneak peek.
Oh, yeah. So they're amazing. So we've got some case studies that we look at. So we look at other Christians in business and what they did and what they didn't do. We've got some like team games so that the Lions can just see how you interact as a team. There's lots of training and teaching. So we get some guests in and talk about how to make your idea a God idea, or how to build your team, and how to get Christian ethos into what you're doing. There's an away day. So we actually go and visit organizations and charities and projects that are doing what we're teaching about, you know, that are really impacting their communities. So that is so amazing to see that. So it's full of training, teaching, and I just promise that after every weekend your mind will be blown and you'll just be fired up to put everything you've learned into your project and your business. And they also do practical things, like they help you write your business plan and help you with your social media strategies and things like that. So you get a lot of that kind of training too.
I've just been looking through the Lions, as they are indeed called. I mean, you've got some familiar faces on here like Tim Jupp, Big Church Day Out, Andy Hawthorne from the Message Trust, Stuart Bell from Alive Church. So many names that I'm looking and I'm going, wow, these people, imagine being mentored by these people and a whole host of other people. And I love that, as you say, they don't expect anything in return. They're just there to give. And I think that is just... well, that's just Jesus at the centre, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. They're just there to give. They're there to train other people and to invest what they know, all their experience, what they've been through, to invest that into others and to help people, you know, get into the next level. And they're all about thinking bigger. They're all about doing bigger. And sometimes you just need that little bit of teaching or training or a little bit of seed money just to get you to that next place.
Well, Gemma, I've loved hearing from you. I've loved hearing your little tips and bits of advice. And I love your heart and passion for the Lions. You know, as someone who has been there and done that, it's so great to hear from your experience. But just finally, before we let you go, maybe someone listening who's going, well, I can't really relate to being in business. I mean, me for myself, I'm not in business. I'm in radio. I'm a radio presenter, and I don't know if I'll ever be called into business. But how can we be seeking to support maybe those around us who are Christians in business? What can we do to help?
I think pray for Christians in business, because you know what? They can really influence the world. They can really influence their communities. And especially at this moment in time when being in business is the hardest, you know, after COVID, after lockdown, the whole running your own business thing is tough. It's really, really tough. So please pray for us that, you know, God will bring us through the current climate, the economy, that we'll be able to get back, we'll be able to bounce back from all of this stuff and be able to be successful again and be able to thrive and get back to influencing people, influence our communities and making a difference in the world.
There we go. I'm on it. I'm going to make notes, adding that to my prayer diary. Pray for Christians in business, you heard, Gemma. Thank you so much for joining us today on Heavenly Minded. It's been wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Well, I loved that Gemma described the Lions as a cross between the Apprentice and Dragons Den, only the Christian version, and a whole lot nicer. It sounds wonderful. It's making me want to come up with some kind of business idea, but knowing me, it probably won't happen. But if that's something that you're interested in, maybe you'd like to apply for the Lions, then head online to thelions.org.uk. All the information you need is on there. Maybe you could put your application in. And if you're listening to this podcast a bit further down the line, when I spoke to Gemma about it and I said, look, is there an end date in all of this? She said, well, there is, but we're always looking for people to take on for the following year. So feel free to get in touch with the Lions if you're interested in that. thelions.org.uk. Well, once again, a huge thank you to Gemma for joining us on Heavenly Minded today. If you have enjoyed this episode, and I really hope that you have, then please leave us a review and a rating. That would just really help get the podcast out there. More people will then discover it. Apparently, it helps with the algorithms and all of that technical stuff that I clearly know nothing about. But if you could leave us a review and a rating, that would be much appreciated. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on Heavenly Minded.